Hey folks, Nathan here from Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold, and the Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable, bringing you a look at another Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars item. This is Edge of the Empire, Far Horizons. It's another of these source books for a specific type of character, in this case, a source book for colonists. So we had one already for explorers, one for hired guns. Now, here's our one for colonists, specifically for Edge of the Empire. Now, of course, lots of new information in here, but basically designed around the idea of how to play with these characters, giving you more options with these types of characters. In other words, not something that's going to have a lot of new expanded universe information in it, or Legends continuity information, as it would be called these days. The first chapter, Building Better Worlds, is sort of a setup talking about the different types of characters you could play, the Politico, the Performer, etc., etc. Goes into some new obligations here for you, and then gets us into our new species. Each of these tends to introduce new species, and you could say this is the one that lets you be fugly. Because the new species here are the Arcona, the Gran, and the Chevin. Damn! Anyway, so you got your new species here, which is always nice, and some new specializations. We have the Entrepreneur, the Marshal, the Performer, and as we get into new talents and such, that eventually, of course, leads us to new motivations and signature abilities. Signature abilities in this case, we've got Insightful Revelation, Unmatched Expertise as our pair here. Chapter 2, Law and Ordnance. Like the title, this is exactly what you would expect it to be. Lots of new, and in some cases, carried over from the old RPG, weapons, and various other gear like vehicles, droids and whatnot. You know, it's basically exactly what you would expect from that type of chapter here. A little bit of new continuity information, some nice, like the background of the HWK 290, some not so nice, like some contradictory information that doesn't match continuity about the YT 1760. That small transport there being beaten out in part because of the YT 1300 coming out, even though the YT 1300 came out decades before it did. And then we get into what I found kind of the most interesting, which is New Horizons Await, the final chapter. And this is basically talking about integrating this type of character into a campaign. That means things like ways to look at personalities, ways to look at the way that these characters would look at the world, so sort of a worldview or perspective aspect here. What to do in different professions, like ways to use those to wrap into adventures. Then you've got some sections here, momentarily as I'm flipping, dealing with specific contracts, different quick little three-part jobs that you could be hired to do. And then it starts talking about colonist campaigns and some ideas for some longer scenarios where you get into some relatively basic breakdowns of some scenarios that you can get into here. Anywhere from just a handful all the way up to 6 episodes in a scenario, though granted they're just general descriptions here. And you do have information about setting up a homestead, setting up a business, upgrading those, and for any type of job your colonists might do, outside of the ones that are already mentioned in there on those predetermined adventure scenarios, you got a pay scale there for what types of things they might choose to do, what that job would entail, how long it would take, and what the pay would be for it. So, I would say, honestly, of all the ones we've seen for individual character classes, that is, Dangerous Covenants for our hired guns, and Enter the Unknown for the explorers, I actually think Far Horizons is probably the coolest, especially since Colonists doesn't tend to scream Star Wars Adventure to me. It screams, look, it's Owen and Beru sitting on their butts on the moisture farm. But this really gives a new perspective to that and gives you a chance to see the potential of those types of characters in an Edge of the Empire campaign. So, I would say, of all the ones so far, for a particular character class, this is probably the one I would pick up. Like the others, though, it is $30, so your mileage will certainly vary.